Election Day is Tuesday, November 5th, but millions of early voters will actually start casting their ballots as early as mid-September, including in the crucial battleground of Pennsylvania. It's one of several states that then-President Trump disputed in the 2020 election. Then Pennsylvania Secretary of State Kathy Boockvar oversaw that election process in the state, and now she works with the Committee for Safe and Secure Elections and the Brennan Center for Justice on Election Security and Voting Rights. And Kathy Boockvar joins me now for more on that. Kathy, thank you for coming on. What are some of your biggest concerns as we approach Election Day 2024?
Thanks so much for having me on the show, Diane. Yeah, look, it's a stressful year, and I think as I look forward, so much has changed over the last 4 years, but one of the things that's really exploded that is a significant concern for me is the disinformation that is out there all over the place. And it's become so much easier to spread fake information, false information, than it is to actually get an information that's real. And unfortunately, that disinformation then leads to other major problems that we're seeing, like threats against election officials, other threats to democracy. And, election officials are literally the heroes of our democracy, without whom we would not be able to exercise our fundamental right to vote. And that certain parties are actually encouraging these attacks, the intimidation factors against election officials is one of my biggest concerns. And thankfully, there's a lot of great people working to help combat that.
Now, we're just a few weeks out from the start of early voting. Is there any part of the process in particular that concerns you this cycle?
Every part of it really requires significant vigilance and resiliency. And frankly, election officials have been preparing for this for their whole professional careers. So I would say, look, when I think about the lead up to Election Day, I think that the disinformation is one of my biggest concerns, as I've mentioned, and these threats that are out there. The closer we get to Election Day and following Election Day, we've got other concerns. Like, for example, we've seen that there are local election officials who are resisting certifying results or making other critical official decisions. I'm concerned about those. We've seen insider threats, right? We just saw Tina Peters in Colorado being convicted for what she did in the 2020 election. And then I'm concerned about after Election Day, right? Between Election Day, January 6th, and in between, we've got certification, we've got the Electoral College, and there's just a lot of opportunities. But again, luckily, there's a lot of great people working to make sure that these issues are smooth and that we can process everything as it's supposed to happen.
So what happens if a candidate just doesn't accept the results?
There's so many processes in place to help prevent any issues arising from that. So, for example, there are very strong laws and regulations that tell election officials you count the votes, you add them together, and then you have to certify, right? And so I think the justice system, which did amazing work in 2020, is going to continue to make sure that that happens. There were also changes made to the Electoral College, the Electoral Count Reform Act that was passed a couple of years ago. That will help prevent some of the January 6th issues from happening. So, for example, now it takes 20% of Congress to bring a challenge to the results of a state, what they're certifying as the results of their election. Before, it was much less. There's clarification from the act that the vice president's role is ministerial. They don't have the ability to throw out a state's results. So there's a lot of processes that have been built in that are stronger now than they were even back in 2020. And that doesn't mean that people aren't going to try. But honestly, we've got some really strong guardrails in place that are going to make sure that every vote can be cast and counted accurately, securely.
All right, former Pennsylvania Secretary of State Kathy Boockvar, thank you.